night, whatever time it is for you. For me, it's morning. For Rui joining us from Portugal, it is actually quite late night over there. We have also uh, Alice and Christian joining us from Australia, like 5 in the morning over there. So thank you everyone for joining us from all around the world. Today, the session today is from Romano. He's a Microsoft MVP from Portugal. He's talking about Power BI hacks. If you think you know Power BI, wait to see his sessions. He's going to show you some specific things that even if you worked with Power BI for a long time, you probably haven't seen those. Very useful session. I've seen a few of his sessions in some other conferences before, and that was fantastic. He's just updating his content as he goes by. And apparently today was Portugal Day as well, so we have him on his own national day speaking for us. Hey, Rui, how are you?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending. Today is Portugal Day, so all the Portuguese that are there are it's their day also.
Great, awesome, thank you. So just one thing I mentioned to everyone before we start is that if you have any questions, feel free to write it in the chat window in your YouTube window. We will get onto those questions in specific times. And that's about it. I'll hand it over to Rui. You can start presenting. Thank you.
Okay. I will share my screen. Let me know if you are seeing it.
Yep, can see it.
Everything fine? So thank you one more time for attending. Thank you, Reza, for having me. Just one thing about myself, I'm a Power BI addict. I use Power BI every day, and it's a really great product. Microsoft MVP, I have a blog. It's not updated as often as I want, but you can follow me there and on LinkedIn and Twitter. So the agenda for today, it's a session. It's my favorite session to do. I really love to do it. It's always an opportunity to add a few tricks to my bag of tricks, and I always review every time I do it. I add a few demos. I remove some of them. So I have a lot of them. I try to this will be a 50-minute session, so I will try to keep it on track. So please, Reza, if I getting off the time, please warn me. But the focus of this session is not a deep dive on anything. It will be mostly on productivity tips, hacks, some DevOps tools that you can use. So something that can make you more productive. That's my focus. So it's not a deep dive on anything. It's not an introduction to Power BI. I will assume that you all know what is Power BI and how to use it. And it's not advanced level like in DAX and Power Query. So I will show some pretty basic stuff, but I will also show some very advanced stuff. So, but don't worry about it. If you I just drop me an email. My email is on the slides. I will share the slides in the end, and I share the code with you. So don't worry about understanding the code. Worry about understanding the useful or the use cases that can be applied to you or not. So let's start pretty basic, and my first two are really basic. So first one is the Power BI desktop defaults. So, and these are here on the left. These are my defaults, and I'm not saying that you should apply these settings, but I will say that this helped me.
Sorry, Rui, just to interrupt. There's a small window of Teams down there. Can you minimize that as well?
Sorry. Yeah.
Perfect.
Sure. So the first one is something that at this one I don't understand why people don't turn this on by default. It's the default visual interaction. So what this is if you go to a report, let me just show you really quick. And if by default Power BI works like this. So in the view. Sorry, it's in here, edit interaction. So by default, Power BI will do an highlight. So, and you can change it. So you can change the default interaction for each visual, but you can change it for the entire report. And for me, something that I always change is like this. So every time I click on a var chart, it will filter all the others and not do the highlight. And actually, there is a setting in the report settings that you can change the default to be cross-filter instead of highlight. Another one is the automatic detection of the column types. So this is something that if you wonder that if it bothers you, every time you connect to a CSV file, it will add a change type, and in the later, and if you add new steps, and that change type will get in the way and get you errors on Power Query, you can disable that. And in types, in my opinion, is really important for you to control and know your types. So I prefer to define my types column by column, or just select all the columns. And there is an option in Power Query to detect all the column types. So I disable this. Another thing that I disable is the auto detection of the new relationship. So relationships is something that is also very important for you to control and to know which type of relation do you want to create, what's the direction of that relationship. So it's something that I normally disable. And now the last two ones are probably the most important ones. The allow data preview in background, and Chris Webb has some blog posts about this, it is something that it could literally make your life way more productive. Why? If you are using Power Query, connecting to web services, or connecting to SharePoint files, or connecting to some slow data source, and if you have a lot of queries, and if you have this on, and by the way, this is on by default, you will notice that Power Query and Power BI will start to be very, very slow. And I have assisted this in my colleagues, at my team, or at customers, just by disabling this. It's the difference of working and not working. So if your Power Query is getting slow, just check if this is on. If it is on, try to put it off. What this will do is it will only preview the data when you click at the query. And if the query is running and you jump to another query, it will cancel the evaluation. And the last one is the auto datetime. And don't get me wrong, actually I have this on right now, and I'm not telling you to disable it. And what is important is for you to understand what it does. If you understand what it does, you won't have any problem. If you don't understand what it does, you could have a problem just like this. So I have a Power BI desktop file, this auto datetime, and this file has 4 rows, only 4 rows. And let me just show you the file. This one. So auto datetime. So in this file is 100K, so it's a pretty small file. But if I go and I activate the auto datetime, so data load, auto datetime on. Let's click OK. You notice that this is taking a while. And now if I save the file, you'll see that the file will go from 100K to 30 megs. And the reason is, when you have the auto datetime, it will look at the dates that you have in your model, and it will create a date dimension, in this case from 2015 to 999. So it will be a data dimension with millions of rows. And this can literally blow up your model. So especially if you are working with HR data models, this happens a lot. And the solution to it is, okay, just don't put that data in there. So put a null, for example, or create a data dimension. That is the common best practice. If you do that, you don't have any problem. So one more time, this is just, you just need to know about this. If you know what it does, you will be ready for the next time you may have next time you create a data model that doesn't have a data dimension. Now, the second tip is also really simple, but this is something that I find in my customers and in other teams. People don't really use it, or they don't really see the value of it. So I can tell you that in my team, this is a fast track to new developments, to create instant reports with low effort. That is a pretty report, and also create a standard. Something that I say to all my customers is, okay, we need to create with you, or you will create in your team, a Power BI template for you. And every time you start a new development, you will start with that template. So I will show you one example. So this is a Power BI file. So I created, in this Power BI file, I have a sales table just for demo purposes. And the thing is, I can export this Power BI file into a Power BI template. So I will do it. And when I export it, it will create a PBIT. So in this Power BI template, it's not, it doesn't have any data. It just have the schema of your data model and the Power Queries that will start from the first time you open it. So if I open the Power BI template, what it will do is it will create a Power BI desktop file from scratch, and that Power BI template, it has a lot of things. So the first thing that it has is it's a theme. So a theme, it will be the standard configuration in terms of layout of my Power BI reports. It can be the colors, it can be the fonts, it will have the default configuration of specific visuals. So I can say that card visuals, they show with a Arial bold or Arial black. So it's a big font. I can say, okay, the cards visuals, they will show with a drop shadow. And I can also say to my template by default will have a calendar table, a timetable. And when I load new data, now imagine that if this sales data, now I just connected to a CSV file with this data, I can just, okay, now this is the new measure that I created. I can just drag the new measure in here, and I already have the layout. One thing that I also recommend, for example, is in the template, you could also have some icons, some predefined icons. So if, for example, I'm working with the banking industry, I just need to copy this because I have a icon here and replace with a new one. So, and instantly I can, without effort, create a pretty report without needing to have the skills to create this kind of layouts. So templates is something that you should know they exist, and in a company and in a team, it's really, really, really important. And it's also important to understand the themes and what you can do with themes. So you can do a lot of things with themes, not only colors. So the first two ones are pretty basic. Let's move into a more complicated one, and this will go like this. So I have around 12 tips. So we'll jump from things that are not related with each other. So this one, it's a copy report layout. And let me try to show you what I mean about the copy report layout. First, let me close a few Power BI desktops because this is getting slow, my laptop. So I have these two reports in here. And my end goal is to copy all the pages, all the visuals, and not only this, but I would also like to copy the configuration of the report, the themes, the visuals that exist in this report, the filter configuration that exists. Let me try, so sorry, let me just open the Zoom it. Forgot. Okay. So I can have so in the report layout, you can have all sorts of things configured in here. So you can have the filters, you can have bookmarks. So, and I want to copy everything. I don't want just to copy the visuals because of course, and most of you should already know that I can just copy and paste between Power BI desktop files. But if I want to copy everything, yeah, I can Control A and Control V, it will work, but this won't copy the filters, this won't copy the bookmarks, this won't copy anything else than the visuals. How do you do it? Okay, let me show you. Let me close this. Also the source. And so I have the two PBIX files. And the first thing that you need to do is to unzip those PBIX files. So the PBIX is a zip folder. So you can rename this to a zip file and extract, or you can install a tool called 7-zip. And 7-zip will allow you to export directly from the PBIX. So let's do this for these two files. Okay. Now, if you look into the Power BI file, you will have this content, and in here there is a folder called report. And the only thing that you need to do is go to the report, copy the content, and then go to the target report and replace all the content. And just paste it. And now you go back one folder, and on the root folder of the PBIX, you just right-click 7-zip or send to a zip file. And you rename this as a PBIX. And now if you try to open this, this will fail. This will get you an unrecognizable version of Power BI Desktop. Now the trick is, if you go to the open as an archive with 7-zip, and there is a file in here called security bindings. And if you delete this file, and now if you just try to open the Power BI file, it will open. And the nice thing about this is it will open and everything will be in there. So remember that target report, that PBIX file was only, that Power BI reports file was only, it was a blank report with nothing, just a card. And now you will see everything that existed in the source report. So it has all the pages, all the filter configurations, all the bookmarks. So this is very handful, and the reason that we discovered this in the team was because we needed to migrate between two models, a report with more than 20 pages and a lot of bookmarks in there. It was like a 1 day or 2 day effort. So with this trick, you can actually copy the entire content of one report to another. There are other ways for you to do that. For example, one way is to publish online and then do a rebind, but this is, in my opinion, is cleaner. But, and I want to just make a disclaimer, this is completely not supported. I figured out that security bindings because I figured it, when you save the report, it's the only file that was changing. So I tried to delete the file, and it worked. I don't know if the next version of Power BI Desktop will keep that open, but it's a really, really handy tool for you to know. Okay, next one, and this is one of my favorites. I call this the file proxy, and this is something that I do all the time. And the idea is basically this. So every time you connect to a data source that are files, you basically have two options. So you have the option of go there. So imagine that you want to connect to a folder. So you do get data, you select the folder, and you select the file that you want to connect. Now, let me show you. So the goal is I want to create a Power BI desktop file that will go into a folder, and to read this folder into Power BI. So what we normally do is we get data from the folder, folder files, and then we do the transformations. And another best practice that you should apply is you should have parameters. This is something, every time you have a data source, I believe that there are no exceptions to this, but every time you have a data source, you should declare that data source, that server, that path as a folder, as a parameter. And then, so the standard way is just do new source, select folder, and then you go for it. So in this case, I'm selecting the files from that folder. I remove it, the products files, because I only wanted the sales, that I have a file for each day, and I do the transformations. And if I have another file, the products, I do the same. So, but in this case, I connect directly to the CSV, using also the parameter, but directly to CSV. The problem with this is, if I tell you, in the future, if you want to change from folder to a SharePoint file, you will need to go by each query and change that. So this is not centralized. So what I normally do, every time I have a files data source, is the first thing that I do is I create a query that is disabled from load. So this is just an intermediary query in Power BI. And the first thing, what I do is, okay, get me all the files. So I do a folder files to get me all the files. And I remove the columns that I don't need. In this case, I only need the content and the name. And then all the other queries, in this case, the sales and the products, they will reference the file proxy. So the sales will target file proxy. It will do the filter rows. So it will filter the products because I don't want the product CSV. I will come here later, and I do the entire transformations. And I do the same for products, but for, in this case, products, it starts from file proxy, but then I will do a navigation to select the file that I want. And I do the transformations. So what is happening here is, if you go to query dependencies, is every file is actually connected. So every query, products, and also the sales, they are connected to the files proxy. And this works. The query folding works perfectly. So don't worry that it won't. These two queries, they will reference this query, but they won't download all the files. So sales will only download the files from the sales, and the product will only download one file that is in this case is the product file. But they have a big advantage now. So let's say that I started with a folder, and now I want I have a requirement to move this to SharePoint. So I want to target my Power BI, instead of being connected to my local folder. I want to connect the Power BI to a SharePoint folder that will have those files, or even more files than the ones that I have locally. So this can also be a good development strategy, because if you are connecting every time to SharePoint, SharePoint will be much slower than your local file system. So you can develop everything in your local file system, And in the end, without changing the transformations that you need to do to get your product table. So in this product table, I'm removing some columns, I'm changing, splitting the price in two to have only the price as a column. So the only thing that I need to do now, if I want to change the data source, is I need to go to the files proxy and, okay, uncomment this, comment this, and uncomment the query that will get the files from SharePoint that I have it already here, but I couldn't just do the connection directly on the files proxy. And now I'm connecting to SharePoint. So, and in this way, I can literally change the data source where the file come without changing and affecting the final tables that will go into my data model. So in my data model, I actually have these two tables. So the data model doesn't know about the file proxy. So file proxy can be a very, very good strategy for you to centralize where the files come from, but also can be a, a productivity boost to stage data locally, work on that data locally. And when you are going to publish online, you can change to the actual data source. And if you want, if there are a lot of files, and there is also another thing that you can do, and Chris Webb blogged about this also, that is, okay, on these sales files, because these are the actual files that I will get like 2 years of data in the actual data source, you can do a transformation of a top N, and you can have a parameter called top N files that when you refresh locally, it will only get 10 files. But when you publish this online, when you publish this to the Power BI online, you can come here, and one advantage that parameters give you is it allows you to change the parameter online and refresh it afterwards. So what this means is, in my local development, I could be working with only 10 files, but when I refresh online, it could be 1,000. So, and this refresh can take 1 hour, but locally, just for development, it will take me 10 minutes or so. So file proxy is a very good strategy for you to be more productive when working with slow data sources, especially. Okay, now another tip is Excel and Power BI. So one of the big advantages, in my opinion, of Power BI is the connection to Excel. It's not only export, is the ability for you to have a pivot table connected to your Power BI data model. And I think that we should embrace this, and we should, and sometimes this can allow us to build some very, very powerful solutions without requiring, for example, Power BI Premium. So you can use Excel to create paginated reports. You can use Excel to create some special types of reports like this one that you can launch literally. I won't say that you cannot do it, but it will be very difficult to do in Power BI, to have a table with 2 columns. So in this case, I'm showing sales to 2015, to sales for 2016, and then for the actual year, I want to show 3 different measures. So you cannot do this in Power BI, but you can do very easily in Excel. Let me show you some examples of things that you can do with Excel. So I have an Excel report in here that is connected to my Power BI data model. So I went to my Power BI data model, downloaded, then analyze in Excel. And so one of the things that you can do is you can build powerful scorecards with Excel. So this was what we have been doing before Power BI. So for some of you, there is nothing new in here, but you can do these kinds of dashboards. You can do a report with a tabular report with where you can configure and have like a pixel perfect report where you say, okay, I want these 2 tables connected to my pivot table, and I want to completely control the layout of this report. And to do this, you need to use an old friend called cube values and cube sets. I won't go into much detail on this, but this allows you to have a cell of a spreadsheet connecting to your Power BI data model and getting a coordinate of your data model. Another thing that you can do is you can have tables like this with queries, with DAX queries. So in this case, I have a table with a DAX query that is doing a summarize over my data model and is getting the data as a tabular format. So this can allow you to do like refresh all the data to your Power BI and then build a pivot table with this or more complex calculations. You can even have a macro, in this case, changing the value of the query and executing. So this can also allow you some very interesting scenarios. And the last one is if you have a requirement to have a paginated report, so something like this that will create a page with a header and repeating the header on each page, and you don't have Premium or Power BI embedded, this can be a good solution for you. So this is actually printable, and it's a paginated report. So, and the only thing that I need to do it is I need Excel. And now you say, okay, I want to send this by email. Okay, you go into another old school solution like a VBA or Interop to do it if you want. But of course that if you have Premium, I would recommend you to use paginated reports, of course. But if you don't have it, this can be your last resort or your only solution to do these kinds of solutions. So I call it the paginated reports of the poor. Now, another, by the way, Reza, any questions? Because so far.
Everything, no, I think everyone is mesmerized by the level of hacks they are watching. So everything is cool. I get a lot of comments saying that this is great, this is good, you rock. So just go on, please. Thank you.
Okay. Now, another hack or tip. This was an hack a while ago. Right now is more a tip. You can export data from Power BI Desktop. And why do you want to export data from Power BI Desktop? One reason is you can do like a quick and dirty ETL solution in Power Query, transform the data to have in the shape that you want. So you can type the data, you can remove the nulls, you can group by, you can do all sorts of transformations in Power Query very fast. And then you want to build a data warehouse POC, and you want to move the data into that data warehouse. I will show you how to do it. Another way is you can also use like a query proxies. What I mean about this is imagine that you want to build a Power BI data model over a very, very slow and critical SQL database or Oracle database. So you don't want Power Query to be every time querying that database because that database is very, very slow. What you can do is you can connect it one time, get all the data, like millions of rows, export CSV, connect your Power BI to that CSV file. So you will create that proxy, do all the work that you need to do, and then in the end, you revert back to the SQL. So, and another appliance of this in our data science team at DevScope, they use it all the time, is they do all these transformations in Power Query very fast, and then they just export to CSV to train their models or to do the first development or first iteration of their machine learning implementation. So let me show you this. So I have this Power BI data model with all these tables. And what I will do is I will just move all that data into a SQL database in a PowerShell script. And you can also do it in DAX Studio, but you have a PowerShell script. You can install this module. It's a free module called Power BI PS Tools. And in this module, there is a commandlet called export Power BI Desktop to SQL. You just need to give it the window name. Yes, it's the actual window name. So it's this name in here. So you give it the window name. and you target a SQL Server database. So I have my SQL Server database in here. It doesn't have any table. If I run the script, this will connect to my Power BI desktop database. It will create for each table, it will create a table for each tabular table, and it will move all the data. So now if I refresh, I will have all my tables in here, and I will have all the rows from the sales table in the SQL Server database. And I can do exactly the same thing for export to CSV. But of course, that if you are not comfortable with PowerShell, you can also do it in DAX Studio. So in DAX Studio, the experience will be more or less the same. So you connect to your Power BI desktop file, and you have this advanced option in here. And in this advanced option, you have export data. You just select export data. You can export to CSV or SQL. Let's select another time SQL. So it's my localhost, and the database is dummy database, and the schema will be DAX Studio. Next, I can actually select the tables in the PowerShell script. We also have a parameter called tables that you can use. Just select export, and Power BI Desktop will do the exports for me. So what you can do with it, I already tell you some examples, but this will be up to you. But I can tell you from experience that this allowed me to build some very, very fast POCs with it. Now, another thing that you need to know, and I will start by this, and then I will do a more complex demo of what is to know about the REST API. So if you work with Power BI, and it's really, really important for you to know that this exists and that you can do all sorts of things with it. So you can do things in automation. You can boost your productivity. You can do DevOps. You can do real time. I will show you 2 examples. So the first example is, imagine that you just want to go over your tenant to all your Power BI workspaces and just export. You want to do a backup of all your Power BI reports that exist in data sets, and you want to do a backup into a file system or to a blob storage. So what you can do is you can write a PowerShell script. In this case, I'm using the Power BI PS. There is also this module. It was a module that I created, but there is an official module from Microsoft. I honestly didn't migrate to the official one because I needed to review the code, but redo the code. But everything that I will do in here, you can do it in the official PowerShell module by Microsoft. There is only one thing that is missing that for me is very useful is device code authentication. So every time I do PowerShell scripting, or normally I use a service principal to do the interaction with the API. But if I want to do some admin operations, I cannot use the service principal, and I want to use device code authentication. So device code authentication basically is if I remove that file and I run the script. So this will ask me. So Microsoft will ask me to go to my to that URL. So it's a device authentication. I just need to put the code in there and authenticate with the account that I want to access. And just like that, the script will run. And the next time I run it, it won't ask me for the credentials. Why? Because it will save in the file system a binary file with not the password but the token to communicate to the REST API. So that's the only reason that for me that is missing on the official module. But in this case, this script, what it does is it will get all the workspaces that I have access to, and for each workspace, it will get all the reports, and it will export that report into a folder. So if I go to the output folder, I will have a folder by each workspace with all the PBIX that exist in there. Now, another example of using the REST API is, imagine that you are moving into a new tenant and you need to create 1,000 workspaces with a specific report in each workspace, with a specific access level in each workspace. So you can actually do something like this. You can have a file system where each folder is a workspace, and each folder, it will have a JSON file telling me, okay, this is the admin of this workspace, this is the members, and the actual Power BI files that should be on that workspace. And you have that for workspace 1, that for workspace 2, and you create a script that will do the following. So it will iterate those folders, and for each folder, it will create the workspace if it doesn't exist. It will set up the users, and it will import the file to the workspace. So if I run it, this will create the workspace, all those workspaces for me. This is normally fast.
A question just came up from Christian. Can we also use this kind of something similar approach for report server, like finding all data sources using a script or something like that in the report server?
Honestly, I don't know. I haven't tried it, but I know that in report server you have a database that is a catalog that you can actually query that database to find out the reports that exist, and probably you could also insert new reports if you want. So in Power BI report server, it's on-prem, so you control the database. So everything that you upload to the Power BI portal in the report server, it's on the database. So you will probably even have more control than this. But as far as I know, there is no API for the Power BI report server like this. So you have an API that is a web service that existed since reporting services, but this API is only for online.
Great, thank you. Yep, I believe the report server databases would provide a simple access anyways, but probably not PowerShell. Thank you. No more questions.
Now, if I go to the workspaces, I actually prefix the workspace as a temp, because otherwise this would get very polluted every time I do a demo. So the two workspaces are in there, and the actual reports are also in there. So this can be also a very good way for you to automate the creation of workspaces. Now I will show you another example that most of it are supported. That is the last one that I will show that is not supported, but the idea is this. So it's a DevOps script that will do the following. I have online a data set, let's call V1, and I want to, I start developing a new version, let's call V2, and I want to publish that V2 Power BI data model to the workspace, but I don't want to overwrite the V1. Why? Because this data set could be a very important data set that is being used by multiple users and multiple reports on multiple workspaces. And I don't want to, when I publish this, to affect these reports. What I want to do is, I want to publish this V2. I want to refresh to have the last version of the data, because I could be using parameters to have a subset of the data, let's say 1 month. But when I publish online, I want to publish, refresh to have the entire data set, let's say 2 years. I want to refresh it. I want to set up the production parameters. So locally, I could be working with a development database. So I want to set up the production parameters or the final parameters. I want to refresh. I want to wait for the refresh to happen. And I want to rebind the reports that are targeting this data set. So I want to rebind those two reports to the new data set. So, and let's start by this. And then we go to the last part, or the unsupported part. So until now, everything is supported. So I have a PowerShell script, and this PowerShell script will, let me just close and open. This PowerShell script will do what I have just explained to you. So it's importing the Power BI IPS data model. It will start by getting the token and validating if the test data set exists. It will import the file. It will set the parameters to the final version of the parameters, and it will refresh and wait for the refresh to happen. Now, let me show you this running. Okay, go to the demo guy. Okay, so I have the V15, and in my workspace, okay, I have a V14. Now, if I run the script, what this will do is this will just publish. Let's just run it. So it should be appearing. Okay, so now we have the new version in here. And this is actually changing now. It's changing the parameters. It is refreshing the data set. And it will do the rebind of that report. Now, the thing is that, this is very straightforward, but a few months ago, I think in middle of 2019, Power BI released an amazing feature called shared data sets. And what that amazing feature does, and if you go into this view lineage, is it will allow you to have a data set with reports from other workspaces than this one. So in this case, I have this V15 report that is that has connections. So I have two reports in here. Actually, I don't know. Okay, I have two reports in this workspace, and I have two other reports on two different workspaces. So I'm using shared data sets. And the supported part is to rebind these two reports, there is no problem. But the thing is, how do you find out all the reports that exist that are targeting this data set? So for that, there is no API. And what I've done is, okay, I tried to figure out what is this API. So what I've done is I just I've done something like this. It's so in the browser, you have this network monitor. So, and if you click here, you can actually figure out what are the APIs that Power BI is calling. So, and I figured out that there is a API called related content that you can call. And this related content, it will give you all the reports that target this data set. So, and it will give you the actual reports from the other workspaces. This is exactly what I want. So, and what I did afterwards was, after I figured out the API, I tried to call that API with the same authentication token that we have from the REST API. So what I did was, okay, first of all, let me get the old data set, the previous version of the data set, and then I just do an invoke REST method with that authentication token to that API. But actually, I needed to also to communicate with another API called group metadata, because this URL is actually, it doesn't use the dataset ID. It will use a model ID. I think it's an internal ID, but this will actually allow me to get that model ID, and then get the impact analysis. This is basically the same way, the same thing of going to the interface and clicking on the impact analysis. And then I just need to iterate all the related reports and execute the rebind. So I just need to execute the rebind operation for each report on the source data set, and we are set. So after that, we can actually remove the old data set, and because we won't have any problems with it. So this can be a good solution for you if, like a DevOps operation, if you just want to publish a new version, you don't want to affect or impact any of the users that are actually connecting to the reports, but be aware that some things that might be broken. So one of the things that will broke for sure is if you have Excel reports connecting to the previous data sets, the ID will change. But this can be a good solution for you to do these deployment pipelines by scripts. So of course this could be running on Azure DevOps pipeline if you want. Now another probably better solution. I actually didn't have the time to do the demo on this, but you have two amazing one blog post by just Weinbeck, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, by Daniel. I don't even risk saying his last name. Daniel actually made a YouTube series and a blog series and a YouTube video explaining this. So just need to see these links. They are pretty amazing. And the idea is, if you have Power BI Premium or Azure Power BI Embedded, you can actually use Tabular Editor or Visual Studio to deploy your model. And with this, you can actually build an Azure DevOps pipeline and do a much more professional deployment pipeline, deploying a new version of your data set to the workspace. And just what just did was, if you don't have Power BI Premium but you have a Azure subscription, you can, of course, you will spend some money with it, but it will be a very small one. You can actually have a script that will activate a Power BI embedded capacity. You can change the workspace and assign the workspace to that capacity, and in the end, publish the new model, and in the end, just bring it back to the shared capacity. And this will work. And it's a very smart way for you to leverage this XMLA endpoints and to publish new models. I'm sorry, Reza, do you hear my cat? Because he's downstairs.
It's not that bad, so all good.
It's not that bad.
No, it is fine.
There's no one home. I'm alone.
Yeah, just letting you know that we have like about 7 more minutes.
Okay, I'm just ending. The last demos, it is something that I wanted to show you is to let people know about the Power Platform. The Power Platform is one of the reasons why I believe that Power BI has a huge success. First, because it's integrated in the Office 365. So everyone that has, you can access Power BI with the same account that you access your email. But there are other players in the Power Platform, like Power Apps and not Microsoft Flow, now it's called Power Automate, that you can use to make amazing and simple stuff. Let me start with the first one. So and let me go to the demo, because we don't have that much time. So the idea is, I have a Power BI. Dashboard that is streaming and pushed. I have this dashboard that has basically a Power BI data set behind the scenes that has previous day data. So in this case, I'm showing data from the previous day, but I have this requirement to show in the same dashboard the real-time data. So a solution could be, of course, having a Power BI premium and incremental refresh and refreshing every 5 minutes or so. Another good solution that probably could be good enough is you can create a streaming data set. And a streaming data set is you go to the workspace, you select streaming data set, select API, you give it a name, and you give a few values. I will show one that is already created. So let's go here, API info, and this will give you an API that you can call to push data in real time. And this will show by the second. And what you can do very easily in a no-code, so of course that you could have a script calling that API, but in a no-code or low-code experience, what you can do is you can create a flow or Power Automate. Just open it. So you can create a flow that is here that will basically do this. So this flow, it will trigger every, I think that there is a minimum of 1 minute or so, but let's say 30 seconds. So every 30 seconds, it will trigger this flow. The flow will execute a query into the database. So this can be the transactional database. It could be a data warehouse that has the data by the minute. And it will just call the streaming, that API URL that I just showed you with the payload of the API. Now, if I run this API, this flow, and this can be, of course, be running manually, just for demo purposes, I'm running it manually. This can be running automatically every second. So can be very easily showing real-time data and import data in the same dashboard. So, and this can be a very nice way and easy way with just using these tools to have a very impactful demo in your implementation, Power BI implementation. Now, another one, and I won't demo this, but it's also very useful. You can have a flow that will refresh a Power BI. And what you can do with this is you can be on the go, because Flow also has a mobile application, and you can be on the with your smartphone issuing a refresh of a specific Power BI data set. So this can be also very useful. And just to end up, and this is my last demo, because I do this all the time, and for me it's also important to get some feedback from you guys. I will show you a demo. My cat just jumped to my back. Sorry. Is you can have a forms, Microsoft Forms. In this case, I will just ask you to open this URL, tinyurl $r eval, and this will have a Microsoft form in here. So if I open this URL, this will have a Microsoft form, and every answer that you gave me, this will trigger a Power Automate, a flow, that will store the data in a SQL database just for archiving, and it will also send the data in real time for a Power BI dashboard. So if I open the dashboard, and if you do me the favor of answering a few ones, this will update in real time. So if I go here and I put test, submit, this should update, I hope, in real time. So this can be this is an example of what you can do with real time and putting all these pieces together. In this case, the flow, the power, the forms, and the Power BI, and the streaming data sets, to get and putting all of this together, you can do amazing stuff. So for me, this is one of the reasons that Power BI excels the competitions, is the what you can do with all this when you mix and match all this together. And believe me that you can do amazing stuff. And that's it, Reza. I hope I didn't go too much out of time. And let's jump to the Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for your time. It was great. I also posted the link to that Microsoft Forms you mentioned. So it should go pretty well, hopefully. In terms of questions, we haven't got much more of questions. There was some discussions about that Power BI report server thing, which you already answered that as well. There are a lot of comments about saying that it was great, fantastic. A lot of people liked it. So thank you again for doing the presentation. There was a question also about how people can get access to the PowerShell scripts and things that you have there. So I imagine you have links, or you can share these with me. I can put it in the description, right?
In the slide deck, I will send the slide decks just by email to you, and then you share it. In the slide deck, you have the links. Maybe some of the demos could not be on the links, but you have my email. Whoever require them, just drop me an email, and I will share. So, my pleasure.
Great, thank you. And yeah, again, getting a lot of comments about it was fantastic tips, great session, thank you. Awesome. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Ree, for doing this session late night at your public holiday Portugal day, which was fantastic. And see you all next time in our next week webinar. Bye.
Thank you. And sorry if my cat bothered too much.
No, that was all fine. Great. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, I think